Welcome to Who Knew. We are fans of the current series of Doctor Who, and here we discuss our likes, dislikes, and insights into the modern regeneration of the show to get you into the Halloween spirit. We recorded an episode based on what episodes we thought fit the Halloween spirit. Here's an episode from last year. Hope you enjoy it, and happy Halloween.
Who turned off the lights?
Today we're taking a quick trip in the TARDIS to visit some Halloween-appropriate episodes. Visit our website, whoknewpodcast.com, or email us at whoknewpodcast@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter and on Facebook at Who Knew Podcast. Subscribe, review, and listen to us on iTunes and Stitcher, or our YouTube channel, youtube.com/whoknewpodcast. These are not necessarily our recommendations of what is the best to worst, but these are just recommendations for what to view during the Halloween season, in case the spirit strikes you. Hi, this is Eugene. Let's introduce ourselves.
Hello, this is Frank.
This is Kelsey.
Hello, this is Auburn.
This is Josh.
This is Heather.
This is Brian.
Oh yeah, we thought it'd be fun to do recommendations of what episodes to watch if you find yourself holding a marathon or binge watching or just you feel like getting in the Halloween spirit. And Doctor Who is known for being watched behind a couch. So we'd like to bring some episodes to light and just talk about why we think these episodes are good for the Halloween season.
One thing about Halloween movies is that it progressively gets more scary. And it gets really scary at the end. Something happens, and usually something jumps up at the end saying, oh, it's not over yet. You know, you have that little either bloody hook at the end kind of thing. So it's odd because Doctor Who kind of does that in reverse. So it starts off unknowing and scary and what's happening. So it's not actually written towards a Halloween theme, you know, because the ending's going to be different. It's going to be more resolved.
Like a Scooby-Doo episode.
Right. But there are some great episodes that have that scariness or traditional characters.
That like chilling factor.
Right.
We'd also like to say in the beginning that we're going to be jumping the timeline. So as we record this, we are currently in the middle of season 3. But our choices, we picked episodes that were all any season of the current incarnation of the show. So it's everything through Christopher Eccleston's season all the way through the last Peter Capaldi season with Bill as his companion. So if you're following along with us, there will be spoilers, but we're gonna try not to ruin the episode for you. And hey, maybe this is an episode that you want to just start to watch on Halloween.
Yeah, we are going to try and keep the spoilers down.
But there will be spoilers.
Well, I'll start with an episode called Hide. It's season 7, and it's the episode 9. It's about the 11th Doctor, who is played by Matt Smith, and his companion Clara Oswald, who is played by Jenna Louise Coleman, written by Neil Cross and directed by Jamie Payne. Hide is an old-fashioned haunted house story with a Doctor Who twist, and is basically a standalone episode. So that I like that you don't have to know too much about it. You can go right into it. The story takes place in 1974, and during the 1970s, there were many haunted house films, like Amityville Horror, Burnt Offerings, Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, The Legend of Hill House. So like the 50s, we had a lot of monster movies. In the 70s, we had a lot of other eerie ghost and haunted house stories. So I thought being set in 74 was a great idea for it. It was inspired by Nigel Neal's 1972 TV play, The Stone Tape, just to give him proper announcement for it.
Good job.
It opens on a dark and stormy night in an old secluded mansion where 2 ghost hunters are attempting to summon a ghost. There's a loud pounding at the front door. As they slowly open it, the Doctor pops out and says hello. So the opening was, got you right away. The costumes were great. The feel of the house was great. It's more of a spooky or eerie story rather than scary. And
Although it has scary moments.
It does, but also has humor and even a love story involved in this episode. Yeah. So it's got a lot of different parts to it. The main scientist is Professor Alec Palmer, and he's played by Dougray Scott. And people know him from some of the Mission Impossible movie and from Ever After, where there's a Cinderella with Drew Barrymore.
He was going to be Wolverine.
Didn't work out. He was the right height for that. He bought the old mansion because it was haunted. And Clara describes Claiborne House as a gigantic old haunted house on the moors, and she's surprised that the professor would buy it just so he can do experiments. Emma Grayling is his assistant, and she's an empath psychic. She's played by Jessica Raine, and she can feel when the ghost is near. And this is an old ghost. There have been records of the ghost back to the 17th century and even beyond, when the house was built in the 14th. So it's an old ghost, and it's known as the Witch of the Well. And Palmer has old surveys of the house and even before, and there's never been a well on the property. So there's mystery on top of mystery going, what is this ghost and why is it called this? There are many traditional and stereotypical motifs running through the episode. It's an old, beautiful mansion. That house is gorgeous. And they use candelabras as their light source as they're walking through the abandoned rooms. The other's otherworld knocking coming from who knows where as they're exploring the house. Cold areas in the house. I mean, just traditional scary parts. You see a figure silhouetted in a lightning flash behind another character, and then it goes away. You know, that kind of little things that are just great for that time period. There's writing on the wall that he says, "Help me," and then fades away. So it's got this creepiness to it. There's even some references to Poltergeist, the movie. Ghost runs through somebody else, you know, and they can feel it. And this is a spoiler. We find out that the ghost isn't alone. Something else is with the ghost. So that, to me, reminded me a lot of Poltergeist, you know, with Carol Ann, don't go into the light kind of thing. So it brought back that memory and that feeling of it as well. There's even references to Classic Who he put in with the Eye of Harmony and a blue crystal from Metabellus 3.
Sorry.
Blue.
That comes up all the time. No, Metabelius 3, that crystal
Depending on how you pronounce it, because they pronounce it differently in the different seasons.
causes a lot of trouble.
So, but I thought it was nice. He's, you know, giving that, you know, nod to the classic and keeping the history running through it. There are also some great character scenes in this episode where Emma, the psychic, tells Clara to beware the doctor, for he has a sliver of ice in his heart. And I just thought that was very poetic. I love the way it was written. And because we've all seen the doctor be cold and have that sternness to him, you know. And another great scene is between Clara and the doctor. Don't want to go into too much in this one because this could be a spoiler of what's going on. But she sees that he can travel in time and wonders, since they're ghost hunting, in his mind, she hasn't been born. Hasn't been born yet, but then she's also already been dead and buried in the earth for millennia. In him, because he can travel from one end to the other. So is she a ghost to him? Or is everybody just a ghost to him? And I thought that was a great question, and their interaction was really great. Going, you're out of time. What are we to you? Why are you here? What are you doing with humans? You know, so I thought that was a great scene. I love that. Just to recap, I thought it was more of a scary story about a haunted house called Hide, and I really liked it.
I agree.
I agree as well. I think this is one of those episodes that I introduced somebody to because it was standalone and it was just spooky. It's pretty good.
Scary. It feels very much in the 60s. Like more than any episode I've watched, this one actually feels like it's in the time. I want to call attention to the sound effect that the ghost makes. You can't really tell what it is when you first hear it, but I can hear it in my head right now. Like it literally haunts me. It sounds very, very scary. And when you find out what it's actually saying, you know, like you said, it unravels backwards from the scary to not so scary. But when you first hear it, it gave me shivers.
I enjoy it a lot. It accomplishes what it sets out to do. Scare you.
And as a trivia, Jessica Raine played Verity Lambert in the Adventure in Time and Space.
Well, that's right.
Or Space and Time.
Yeah, one of the things that, like, as someone who doesn't like scary stuff, well, it's an alien, right? Like, it's not really
Aliens
a ghost.
can't be scary.
So, like, at any point in this episode, is the doctor like, oh, this could be a ghost?
I don't want to give anything away, but the doctor doesn't really believe in ghosts. He thinks, you know, there's another explanation. And I do like this episode also because it's the second half of the 7th season where he gets a new companion, Clara. And I like their interaction. I like the chemistry between those two. I think Matt Smith and Jenna Louise Coleman really do work well together. And I was wishing that both of them would stay around for another season. I think they needed more of those two.
Yeah.
They worked well together. In my opinion, I know a lot of people don't like them, but I liked it. I also liked his new outfit that he's starting to wear.
I agree with you.
Victorian thing.
I totally agree with you.
I'm gonna jump ahead to watch that one because of what
Yeah,
you said.
I highly recommend you and because it's standalone, you
can-
can just
Right.
pull it
Yeah.
out and watch it. Like
Right,
Totally.
yeah.
So yeah, you should definitely do. I think I'm gonna go do that too.
So my Halloween episode is The Empty Child, a very early one from season 1. It's the 9th episode of the 9th Doctor, portrayed by Christopher Eccleston, written by Stephen Moffat and directed by James Hawes. The companion is Rose, Billie Piper. In this episode, the Doctor and his companion, Rose, have arrived in 1941 during the London Blitz, where they find that the city has been terrorized by a strange child in a gas mask, repeatedly asking for his mother, going around saying, "Are you my mummy?" So the reason I picked this episode for Halloween, because it was between this and then I was also thinking of choosing the episode Midnight with David Tennant later on, but as creepy as that one is, it's more like a Twilight Zone and no real monsters or horror movie aspects. It's more of like a psychological thriller, whereas this one...
I just wanted to bring up, since you're talking about monsters, it was very similar to Monsters That Do on Maple Street, the Twilight Zone episode written by Rod Serling from 1960, March 4th, 1960.
That mob
So if you've seen that, Midnight is very similar, where it's fear and how people are reacting to the fear and making
Right.
them not trust other people and making that be the enemy of
Which
it all.
that has a good creepy vibe for Halloween, but for Halloween I think of monsters and gimmicks and you know,
Creepy
cliched,
children.
creepy children. I also, in watching this recently, the whole thing for the most part, except when it digresses to the bits with Jack and sometimes with orphan kids in the streets, the whole thing is pretty much shot like a horror movie. Even when something is not scary is going on, it's smoky. There's silhouettes, the way things are framed in the foreground and the background. So it's definitely giving you that Halloween the movie vibe, and the mystery of what's happening is progressing. But at the same time, they keep cutting to the threat of this seemingly innocuous child, but the way it's portrayed, like in The Shining or whatever, it's just scarier and scarier. And of course, even though it's very Rose-like for her to go after someone who's calling for help or the blue collar person, it's still like it goes into the trope of the dumb blonde going down the street to go after the monster and don't go there. Well, oh, here's a rope. Why don't I climb it? And then she just finds herself into trouble. So even though it's following the normal things that happen on the show, it's also following the common tropes of a Halloween monster movie or something, or even a slasher movie. It does then take a big turn into sci-fi and I guess emotional commentary with Nancy and the orphans and stuff. But as soon as that kid comes back in, it's just as creepy again. And then when the Doctor gets to the hospital,
All bets are off.
You're kind of used to the kid by then, so you're like, okay, I get what's going on with the kid, but now everyone keeps getting away from him. So what's the big deal? And she is trapped in the kitchen with him, but then there's all those people, so now it's an army of them. And Frank, I don't know if it was this episode or last where you mentioned the Dick Van Dyke Show with everyone, they're all zombie aliens.
The no thumbs?
With
With no thumbs and the eyes in the back of their head.
and then they crave peanuts.
Walnuts.
Walnuts, sorry.
Get your nuts correct.
I heard somebody out there go, no, it's walnuts. So
Right.
yes, we know it's walnuts.
The zombie robot group of them slowly attacking. It's the slow attack that's the most scary, and then you see the Doctor not our doctor, the physician, transform.
Dr. Constantine.
Dr. Constantine, yes. Which, even though the special effects are good, they're dated. It is creepy.
Yeah.
As creepy as it is, it doesn't get too much. I think it's a good, solid vibe for a Halloween episode, even though it's a cliffhanger. Because it does end on a really high, oh no, what's going to happen note, and the last image of the show is even really creepy. Just bear in mind, you don't know what, it ends on a cliffhanger, how are they going to get out of this? But I would recommend the second episode as a companion episode if you're going to watch, a couple hours of television, if you're going to watch a movie, but it's not as Halloween-y. It definitely turns into more of a regular Doctor Who episode with some creepy elements.
Which is the Doctor Dances.
The Doctor Dances, yes.
Not the Doctor Skeleton Dances.
Oh.
That which,
I'm sorry.
So I don't think it would spoil your Halloween mood, but if you don't need to know how everything wraps up and you just want a fun, good little scare, The Empty Child is a perfect episode, I think.
And you can skip the unraveling part that we've been talking about.
Right,
Just
the
stay
down.
straight in the scary.
Right.
And mostly because of the imagery of a small blonde child in prep school dress with wearing a gas mask and being backlit.
Yeah. I'm so glad you're recommending this one, Josh, because I was like, this is also one that I think is a good Halloween viewing. People wear gas masks for Halloween costumes, even if they've never watched Doctor Who. And it's a creepy image. A gas mask by
very
itself, let alone this whole like otherworldly factor. So yeah.
Plus, every time you see
like
one,
your-
somebody's going to say,
Are
"Are you my mommy?"
No, The Empty Child is a good episode. I think it's the first one we unanimously recommended for a new viewer to watch.
Yes, it was.
And even though it's a cliffhanger.
Yes. No, that's good. I like your reasonings for recommending just the single episode. I like that.
My episode that I picked is one of my favorites, which is Tooth and Claw. This is a story from the second season. The Doctor is the 10th Doctor, played by David Tennant. The companion is Rose Tyler, played by Billy Piper. The writer of the episode was Russell Davies, and the director was Euros Lynn. I just think this is an all-around fun episode for many different reasons, but I just think that it is very moody. It's very creepy. There's weird bald monks in red robes. There's a castle that's, old and dark. Starts off on the Scottish moors. And, as a big fan of American Werewolf in London, stay off the Scottish moors because there's always going to be werewolves. And this episode is the werewolf episode. I just like it because it really creates the tone that it really creates the tone that it sets out to create. The dialogue, there's a lot of dialogue in it that says things of, there's tales of wolves to frighten children. The Queen Victoria herself says she likes, legends, fairy tales and stories. I like that it adds stuff to the werewolf lore. I mean, at one point the Doctor does say, "Do you have any bullets of silver?" No. Well, then we need to run. But then in the story, they discover that this particular werewolf has a resistance to mistletoe. So I thought that was an interesting new thing that you could add, that the monks had trained this werewolf to not like mistletoe. Spoiler, it's very Doctor Who in nature in that this isn't a werewolf. This is an alien creature that can possess human beings, and this creature reacts to moonlight and becomes a werewolf. So I like the fact that this is a myth, but Doctor Who can explain it in its scientific, albeit alien, facts. So there's a scientific, factual reason why this creature is the way it is. Great dialogue. I mean, you can't top the dialogue of "I carved out his soul and I sat in his heart." I mean, that's just terrifying. It's lit like a horror movie. It's acted like a horror movie. The camera angles are like horror movies. The scene where the Doctor is leaning up against the door and the wolf is on the other side sniffing. I mean, just creepy, creepy, creepy.
And the CG is pretty good too. The
CG's not bad. Yeah, and then also in the library, it's trying to get in, and you hear the werewolf go around the library, and you're all freaked
testing
out.
for the
Testing to
openings.
see if there's any weaknesses anywhere. And then spoiler, you get to the end, problem solved, or is it? So that horror story twist at the end, and you look at Princess Anne, and oh my God, they're werewolves. So.
I don't remember
I
that
really,
part.
really like. And then it sets up Torchwood.
Is this also the episode where there's a scene in a misty valley, or am I thinking of a different werewolf movie? Okay.
No.
And
There is some
they all
location.
stay in
The manor.
I think
the
you might be
manor?
thinking of the Sherlock
episode.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's immediately what came to my head when you described that.
But this episode does have that same feel.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So
Yes.
it makes sense that you could see that in this episode in your memory.
And it does have location shooting.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. That's
I
nice.
don't know if it's in Scotland where they film, but it has the long, desolate grassland look that, they're
gloomy
in the
sky.
middle of nowhere. And, and then they didn't stay off the moors.
I agree. I'm glad you have that episode. Excuse me. Glad you had that episode. I'm getting a little scared here just remembering it all. But it is a well-done episode as a standalone episode, you know. And so if you just want to watch Doctor Who, this is a great one. So
I have
and it
introduced
adds-
Doctor Who too with this episode.
And that adds that, you know, traditional, you know, werewolf aspect to the story, which is great for Halloween.
It seems like almost every, you know, sci-fi or fantasy type of show or movie franchise will always land on the universal monsters at some point. Werewolf, Frankenstein, vampire, Dracula, whatever. Like they'll all, and I'm always curious to see what they do with it.
Well, they're the universal monsters,
Yeah.
and they're also the universal monsters.
Exactly.
So,
Lowercase u or uppercase u?
both. All right, I'm going to go next, just to keep changing our doctors. I'm going to do the episode Knock Knock from season 10, episode 4, with Peter Capaldi as the 12th Doctor and his companion Bill, played by Pearl Mackie.
Yay!
This episode was directed by Bill Anderson, and it was written by Mike Bartlett. And it's different from the episodes we've mentioned previously because I think the feeling is much different. It's very much like a Friday the 13th Scream teen slasher film, minus the slashing, but there is some pretty
A PG rated rather than R,
creepy
right?
stuff, that I would say is equivalent to the slashing. And it starts out very much in the same vein that the films I mentioned start out, where it doesn't seem creepy at first. It's kind of goofy. It's 6 young kids looking for a place to live. They're all broke, but all the places they see are, junk, and they can't fit in them. And then out of nowhere, this old man pops up and says, "Are you looking for a place to live?" And he just happens to have this big, beautiful, creepy mansion for almost no rent. What?
What could go wrong?
Right? So 5 out of the 6 are like, hell yeah. And then Bill's the only one with the sense to think, like, what's wrong with it? Why would we be getting it so cheaply? But eventually she falls in line too with the others, and they all happily move in. Enter the doctor. Bill is embarrassed by him, which we don't ever see in the new series. She introduces him as her granddad and can't wait for him to leave so her and her friends can hang out. But he becomes suspicious of the place as well. So, which of course, duh. One of the it's got all the classic horror movie tropes in it. Right away, you have a record skipping with a song playing over and over. You have somebody behind a closed door screaming, but you have no idea what happened. Then you have things like, did you hear that? And everyone creeps into the other room to find out what the sound is. And surprise, it's just the doctor in the closet making noise. The whole fake out thing. It's got, the house is very creaky, which ends up being very important later. But all the little creaks and noises in the house. It feels almost exactly like you're watching one of those old slasher films. And in slasher film fashion, the kids start to disappear one by one. And eventually I don't know how much I want to say, but we find out that the house itself is, in a sense, eating the kids. Dun, dun, dun.
So the creaking was like its stomach gurgling?
Something like that, yeah. Now, there is an elaborate explanation as to why that is and who the old man is, etc. I'm not necessarily going to go into that, especially because this episode is so new. It's possible many people haven't watched it yet. But the visual effects, when they discover that the house is
Sinister.
quote unquote, eating the teenagers, is nightmarish. Like,
Yeah.
you will have a nightmare when you see it, because at one point they do walk in on one of the teenagers stuck in half absorption, and amazingly they don't freak out nearly as much as I did at home in front of my TV, but I guess they had to keep it together.
No, I do remember that being like, you are surprisingly calm for
Like,
what's
oh my
going
god,
on.
do you not see that? That is horrifying.
Maybe they couldn't see it.
Yeah, if it wasn't done
because
yet.
it was
all
all
in post.
Perception
done in
filter. I would have to say that the resolution, it does end on sort of like a,
Shall we say flat?
cop out.
Yeah. It's not the best. However, I would say it sort of remains pretty creepy and messed up straight through to the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
So at least you can say that for it being Halloween related. Personally, I'm not a fan of slasher films, so the ending is kind of in line to what I'm used to, in my opinion, with slasher movies. It's always just kind of like, well, we have to end this somehow. But it's definitely worth watching because it is also sort of a standalone episode. You don't really have to know anything about
No.
Bill or the doctor.
That's pretty true. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, maybe it's even sort of helpful if you don't, because
That's a good point.
all you know is this old man won't leave her alone, and it's kind of like one of those I'm hanging out with my friends now kind of scenarios, and he's funny. Capaldi's very funny in it. He brings a little humor to the horror, and so yeah, anyone can watch it. Great for Halloween. Very creepy. Be prepared for some weird imagery that's going to haunt you forever. No, maybe not forever, but for a while.
I like that episode. Again, the ending maybe, but it wasn't as bad as some other people thought the ending was.
Me.
But I like that
There are
episode.
some- yeah.
It
There are some
reminded me
Me
a bit
too.
of Hyde. But I think your description in the style and the feel of it is very different. So
Yes.
that's really good that they have two different haunted house stories that are told very differently. So I like that.
Yeah, it definitely has a different vibe. I think maybe Hyde is more my vibe, as I mentioned, and because I don't watch slashers. But I know that slashers are beloved by many, and I think the fact that they intentionally use so many of the recognizable things from
Right.
those movies was really great. And I think if you're one of those people who eats that stuff up, like, you're definitely going to love this episode.
All right, well, I'm going to take us back a doctor to the 11th Doctor, Matt Smith's Doctor. My recommendation for Halloween viewing is Night Terrors. As I said, it's an 11th Doctor episode with companions Amy. Does anyone want to feed me who she's playing? The actresses?
Karen Gillan.
Okay.
Gilliam.
So, and Rory, played by
Arthur
Darville.
Darville.
It is season 6, episode 9. It was written by Mark Gatiss and directed by Richard Clark. In the episode, the doctor receives a message on his psychic paper asking him to, quote, save me from the monsters. So he decides to make a house call to an 8-year-old boy named George, who is terrified of almost anything, everything, and especially dreads the cupboard in his bedroom. While the doctor discusses this with George's father, Amy and Rory become trapped in a strange house with terrifying life-size dolls. Night Terrors was inspired by Gaddis's actual fear of dolls, so you know it's going to be scary. Also, who can't relate to a kid that is afraid of shadows and sounds of their bedroom at night? I also think this would be a good one to watch with anyone who hasn't seen the show before, as all the ones I think we've mentioned so far, they're standalones, and you could introduce them to a new viewer. And I think this one especially because you may remember, but I didn't, but during this season, there's a brief explanation of the premise of Doctor Who that's a part of the main titles. And it's told through Amy setting up how she got involved with the Doctor. And it sort of explains that he's a time traveler / alien. So with that bit of information at the top of the episode, I think the only other thing you would have to tell someone who's never watched before is you might have to set up the psychic paper and how that works. And then they would that's all they need to know. There is a shot at the end when the gang get back inside the TARDIS. On the screen is a picture of the Doctor and his date of death. But that shot is preempted by the scary music theme we heard throughout the episode. So it gives you that unsettling feeling that not all is well, because as we've said, like with the Doctor Who episodes, they get the scary plots get wrapped up with a nice pretty bow. But then you've got like this creepy music comes in at the end. So you're like, oh, maybe not. And I think if you're already in the mood of Halloween, this episode will make you jump. And the twist will make you gasp if you haven't seen it in a while, that is. Also in this episode, the Doctor becomes scared a couple times, which is always good for getting someone to the edge of their seat. I recommend Night Terrors as a Halloween viewing because for me, it ticks all the scary movie boxes. Unseen monsters, check. Small child with supernatural powers that adults don't understand and are afraid of, check. Dark haunted house, check. Scary music, check. and creepy life-size dolls. A check.
But even watching this with you, watching it, like I'm sure I've seen it, but I didn't remember it very well either. So, yeah, it's one of those that it probably is easy to skip over or miss.
Again, I rewatched this in preparation for this podcast. I knew that I wanted to do Night Terrors because I remember this episode being really scary, but I hadn't seen it in a while, so I rewatched it to to confirm that this would be a good scary one to watch on Halloween. And yeah, the twist, I was like, what? And then the twist takes the plot to another scary level because then you don't know. It was fun rewatching it.
It's not very Halloween-y, but I really love the way Matt Smith works with children when he's the doctor, and that little boy and his scenes with the little boy like totally steal the show for me. On a more Halloween-y note, I'm not really somebody who's afraid of dolls, and I guess that's a certain kind of doll.
Yeah, they're called peg dolls.
Peg dolls?
And the faces are painted onto like a wooden oval.
Yeah, they're horrifying.
Yeah.
Like, anybody who has those in their house should burn them immediately.
I remember slightly this episode, but what comes to mind, and tell me if I'm remembering the right episode, is the doctor and the boy, and they're talking about the closet, and the boy's on the bed.
Yes.
And that was an eerie scene, because that's the one that stayed with me, just the boy describing his fears.
Yeah, because he puts off everything in the episode, his mom has come up with this idea to try to get him to be less afraid of things. It's like, anything you're scared of, put it in the closet. And so now what it has created is this wardrobe full of, like, quote-unquote evil things that this kid is afraid of.
Yeah, because I don't remember it too well. I got to watch it again. But that scene has stayed with me. So I think there's something about that and just the way the story was told. And like you said, the interaction between the doctor and the kid is great.
Something about those old wardrobes. Like, if there's no door to Narnia in the back, then keep me away.
No, the opening or the beginning of this episode really sticks with me because there's a kid scared, which is normal for Doctor Who, but then he sends out a message on the psychic paper. I'm like, how powerful is this kid? And what is going on? I really enjoyed that setup. I don't know if I can say for the twist, but I like the setup.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a good setup, and it's also good if you don't know anything about Doctor, because it doesn't begin with the doctor. It begins with a kid.
Yeah.
Who's scared.
Everyone understands that.
Yes.
I chose an episode titled Silence in the Library, which is a two-parter. The second part is called Forest of the Dead. And they are the 8th and 9th episode of the 4th season. Stephen Moffat is the writer. And this is before he took over the show. So this is kind of...
So it's good.
Yes, it is very good. Euros Lynn directed. It's David Tennant, again, as the 10th Doctor, with Catherine Tate playing Donna Noble.
Yay!
Yes. The cold open, a young girl is talking with a doctor named Moon, and when she closes her eyes, she goes to different places in a library. A shaking door scares her as she watches the doctor and Donna burst into the room. That's the cold open. When we get back, we change to the doctor and Donna's perspective. They arrive at this library planet, but where are all the people? They discover the room that was from the cold open and find a security camera, using air quotes there, and they discover that, well, we as the audience discover that this is the little girl. Later in this episode, we are introduced to River Song, who is leading a expedition to see what happened to all the people in the library. And interesting in this is that River already knows the doctor and is very familiar with him, calling him pretty boy. And it's great to see the doctor out of his comfort zone. We come to find out as the audience that the library is infested with flesh-eating shadow piranhas called the Vashta Narada. And in horror movie fashion, the crew starts getting picked off one by one. And thanks to 51st century communications technology, we also get to hear dead crew members speak to us for a few minutes after they've died.
Super.
Yeah, this episode isn't necessary. Well, rewatching it, I wasn't as scared as I remember being the first time watching it. I think just because I know now like where everything's going. But it definitely, so it doesn't have like the jump out at you kind of scares as some of these other episodes, but it does have a lot of creepiness and a lot of very morose, like emotional elements to it. Some of the episodes we've talked about, like when I think of a movie marathon for Halloween, like sometimes that can be watching the episodes, but other times if you're like just throwing a party, like, you know, you'll have something playing in the background, and a lot of these episodes would work either way just because some of the imagery is so creepy. This one has a little bit of that, but I think it's more the story is what gets creepier, scary. So as the archaeology team loses more people, the little girl tries to save them, and the doctor, also realizing that this is a very dangerous situation, teleports Donna back to the TARDIS. But something goes wrong soon after the teleport, and Donna screams and disappears. And the first episode ends with this information kiosk in the library having Donna Noble's face, and Donna saying the words, "Donna Noble has left the library. Donna Noble has been saved." And at the same time, this fleshless skeleton in a spacesuit is also coming after our heroes. And I don't remember if he's saying at this point, but his catchphrase is, "Who turned out the lights?" And one of the reasons why I picked this episode, I'm going to stick with the first episode. I won't give the summary of the resolve of the second episode. I think you could watch both, though, for Halloween. But it's very quotable. Donna Noble has left the library. Donna Noble has been saved. Like, I will still just like that will pop into my head. Yes,
for no reason.
And whenever the lights go off, "Who turned off the lights?" is another one that is just ingrained in my head.
It never gets old.
No.
I wish you could see the eye roll.
We have skeletons in spacesuits.
Always classic.
In the second episode, we get creepy kid copies. They're like digital copies of kids that, again, kids are creepy. The Vashta are shadows that kill. That's a very like cool, different take on the monster.
Yeah. Don't go into the light, or don't go out of,
stay out of the shadows.
Step on the crack.
The creepiness, I don't know how they came up with the idea that there's some psychic link to a communications technology, and it allows you to talk after you die, and that's okay. And the crew kind of just take it as a part of life in their 51st century life, but
they're just ghosting.
I suppose it would be helpful if you got murdered, because then you could be like, "Jonathan did it."
Yeah, but that was creepy. And Catherine Tate, when she first like the first death, she's talking to this person who has just died, and I mean, she kills it acting. She's crying, and she just is a very human response, and yeah, I love it.
Plus, in the second episode, there's the mysterious woman in the black veil.
Yes.
That's always
Who's
around
very
Donna.
creepy.
That's creepy.
Yes.
And then when you actually see what's under the veil, also creepy.
Also very creepy. I think this is another really good episode. River, we get to know her a lot more after this. I don't know how much we want to say about River's song, but yeah, she becomes quite an interesting character in the Doctor Who universe. The first episode, though, the cliffhanger with Donna, her face being a part of that, and I forget if I watched this live, probably not, but still having that cliffhanger where a companion is potentially lost in such a way, and this is still early on, and you have a show where your main character can die and get regenerated, and people come and go. And so I remember watching this and that cliffhanger where like I had just gotten to really start liking Donna, and then they're gonna take her away from me. So yeah,
that was the first time that a companion had been hurt in such a way, or like you said, potentially taken away in some creepy, horrible way.
Just her face ripped off and put on a statue.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah.
You could look at it as her body ripped off and her face saved.
Whatever works for you.
Half full, half empty.
One of the things that I think make Silence in the Library creepier is when the doctor explains that the what's the monster called? The
Vashta Narada.
Vashta.
Thank you.
For some reason, that's the one crazy name I can remember.
That they do exist on Earth as well. Just
yeah.
just not as intensely. So that's why people aren't getting eaten. But if you
People
the
disappear in the
sunbeam, if you the dust in the sunbeam, that's them. You're like, thanks. Thanks for that.
Yeah, that reminds me of that image where they throw the chicken bone into the shadow.
Yeah.
I mean, how they did that practically, or whatever they did for special effects, is amazing.
Yeah, and I didn't write it in my summary, but this episode won, I think, a Hugo Award
Yeah.
for science fiction writing. So it's a very good episode. I think Stephen Moffat ends up doing a lot of the darker, or writing a lot of the darker stuff.
Well, Stephen Moffat likes to take common, ordinary things and make them terrifying.
Just we want to mention that the skeleton in the spacesuit might have been inspired by the animated
Yeah,
movie.
I don't know if we've talked about it yet in podcast world, but there's an animated movie with Martha and the
Right.
Doctor.
Infinite Quest.
Infinite Quest. But the idea of a skeleton in a spacesuit is something that the Doctor Who universe was experimenting with before this episode. But I think they pulled it off really well
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
in this.
I think of the imagery in this episode quite often.
Yeah, and this is one I've introduced to somebody new.
Oh, okay.
And so it works on that level. Continuing on, for me, I chose Waters of Mars, which is the third special in the in-between seasons between David Tennant's departure and Matt Smith's arrival. This is the third special. It's after season 4. It's written by Russell T. Davies and Phil Ford. David Tennant is the 10th Doctor, and there is no official companion, but Adelaide Brooke, played by Lindsay Duncan, is the surrogate companion for this particular special.
She's so good.
She is very good. The Doctor is on Mars in the year 2059. Bowie Base 1 is the first off-world colony. Something's in the water, and then things go wrong. There's just a lot of stuff that I won't go into, but this episode, I'm picking this episode because it reminds me something more personal. I remember being introduced to Night of the Living Dead, the original black and white film, on a Halloween. I believe it was just running on TV at the time. I think the fledgling Fox network was new, and all they were playing was Night of the Living Dead because they had no programming. And I remember, instead of wanting to go out and get free candy and trick or treat, I wanted to stay at home and finish this movie.
Oh, wow.
And I think from then on, I just fell in love with horror movies and zombie movies in general before, like, even The Walking Dead became the phenomenon that it is now. And so Waters of Mars really reminds me of that early childhood memory. It really reminds me of, like, Day of the Dead, which is the one where the army base is trying to figure out what's going on with all these dead zombies rising. And same thing with Waters of Mars, that you have scientists figuring out what's going on, or trying to figure out what's going on with this unknown entity being introduced into their environment, and it creating zombie-like water creatures. And it also reminds me of John Carpenter's The Thing, where everybody's being picked off one by one by this new alien being introduced, and they can't really go outside because it's a harsh environment. Like in The Thing, it's sub-zero temperatures, where in Mars there's no breathable air. And the water zombie creatures are also like Michael Myers in Halloween, and to an extent the Terminator in the first Terminator movie, where he's a bad guy and he's an unrelenting, indestructible force of nature that's just gonna go after you with all his might. And then they managed to make water creepy. I mean, in absence of blood, you
Water
have
is
water.
patient.
Yeah.
Water always wins.
But in absence of blood, they're dripping water, and it's still creepy.
Really.
That sound.
Isn't it that they can't touch the water at some point as well?
Yeah, there's something in the water
Right, that
from
if they
Mars.
touch it, it'll get.
Mhm.
So
Not even a drop.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also too that we know what water feels like, so we can relate to that sensation.
Yeah. And I also picked this one because to me it is standalone in the fact that the Doctor is going into a place with locked events. He knows that everybody is supposed to die on Bowie Base 1, and he is sort of us. He wants to help these people and he's viewing them for what they're going through, but he can't really change history in this instance, which is something that he is sort of uncomfortable with in his journey as a character at this point. And yeah, all the horror and the suspense and the practical effects really just remind me of my introduction into horror.
They're very scary visuals.
Yeah, like a lot of it reminds me too of John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness. Have you ever seen that?
Yes, with the scientists too.
But yeah, and also too the zombies just standing outside waiting, and they don't know what they're waiting to do. And
Is this the one with the school bus in the desert?
No, that's the one
okay.
before this one.
That's Planet of the Dead.
I thought it was like an ironic title.
yes, no.
I thought that's what.
That one actress who can do that thing where she makes her eyes really big.
And the water coming out of her mouth.
Yeah.
I think that's Maggie Kane, the character.
She makes me want to cry.
Yeah.
And this episode also has an unpleasant ending.
Yes. Oh, that's another reason I picked this one because
That's so good.
when horror works, it makes you feel uneasy and it elicits a elevated heart rate, and the the good guy is not supposed to win at the end of the story that you're telling. And in this case, the Doctor can't change or save anybody, and to see him lose in this case, I think is very appropriate for a Halloween horror marathon.
And he loses in a very horrible way, too.
Yeah.
It's worse than the outcome that would have happened if he had never been there.
Hmm. And he's able to know these people rather than being footnotes in history.
Yeah.
Just makes me think of the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
Absolutely.
Well, the Time Lord Triumphant is terrifying.
Was the woman in this? Was she also the woman in Sherlock who plays like?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And she was also in Rome.
Oh,
Well, finish that off, please. Who?
She's like the chief inspector or
She's a
she's a high official.
member of parliament who's a high official.
She was a member of parliament. She played bass.
She's being blackmailed by that awful blackmailer guy.
Not that kind of thing.
Yes, what you said.
Yes.
Blackmail. This episode's like a movie. Like, I wish
Yeah.
it was
Yes.
longer.
Yeah.
God,
I
absolutely.
could watch it for 2.5 hours.
I could
I think the last
easily
time I
too.
watched it, it was getting towards the end. I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, there's only this much time left.
No,
How
no!
is this gonna?
It's an amazing episode.
Wait, it was only an hour?
I believe so.
It's like I remember it being
Yeah.
longer. I thought it was one of those,
No, it's just an hour.
standalone, so I thought it was an hour and 15.
No,
or
the
an hour, one of
specials
those.
weren't any longer
Yeah.
except
Really?
for the end.
I just think
one.
it's a really like
The one where he regenerates is really long.
yeah.
Wow.
And also, like, there's so many minor characters and that you
Yeah.
feel like you get to know in such a short
Yeah.
time.
Right.
What?
Well, I think this is a singular story. It doesn't digress with any plots from other episodes and stuff like that. So it can take its time following one path.
And the Doctor, his internal struggle in this is it's just
an hour.
good and
And 2
scary.
minutes.
Good and scary.
I can't remember that aspect too much. This is one of my favorite episodes, but
Well, when he has to just, he knows he can't change
right.
what's happening. He just has to stand there and watch. Which is why immediately when he finds out what he has walked into, he tries to leave,
But he doesn't.
but he doesn't.
And that's another thing that they kind of turn its head on, the horror trope of that you shouldn't go upstairs or into the basement where you can't escape.
Get out of the house.
Get out, but yet the Doctor stays, and we're okay with him staying because of his curious nature, of his inherent goodwill to kind of help and save these people, but yet he can't.
It reminds me of that moment in the Satan pit when he's like, you know that feeling when you know you shouldn't go down there? And then he goes down there.
Yeah.
Also, do you ever notice how whenever there's like an expedition of any kind, it's always a woman in charge?
We did mention
Every
that
single time.
Oh yeah.
recently, 42.
Well, I mean, this show's been progressive, from its new inception at least, and I think that was sort of the point of a lot of things that they were doing. The fact that the women companions are very strong.
But they don't just do it once or twice. Like,
thing is-
I can't think of one.
One
The opposite.
expedition
The
male
thing is that with every expedition, something goes wrong. So
Oh.
The path to hell was paved with good intentions.
I mean, that's not really related to Halloween.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Women
but-
can be
I love
scary.
Saul. So
It is a scary thought. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I was waiting. See, that, when I said it, I looked at you like, are you going to go there? Are you going to do it?
Those are our recommendations for a Halloween marathon, but there are many other episodes that we have not covered. We wanted to explore other episodes that you might not have thought.
Since Arlene isn't here, I know there's one
with us
episode.
today, she's still
Yes.
here.
I guess we should, with the Halloween and Ghost, talk about that.
What have you heard?
Oh, hi, Arlene. You are here.
So she wasn't able to be here today. An episode I know that she did like and that can fit in with this is one that I think everybody likes and agrees. And that episode is
Blank.
So that is a scary episode that I think could be great for Halloween, but it is one that I think has already been talked about in the previous episodes. So we wanted to give a little bit more diversity to some of the other.
But we want to also
Options.
recognize that
Right.
this is one we thought of, but we did not cover.
But listen to our episode about Blank.
Yes, that is a very fun episode.
I just took quick notes, by the way, of everybody's episode. And so for our Halloween recommendations, we're recommending episodes that are zombies, werewolves, ghosts, children, the dark, dolls, and haunted houses.
Nice. Yep. There you go.
Accurate.
It's pretty well rounded.
like
That's
Halloween.
Halloween.
That's Halloween.
Some other ones that were mentioned but we didn't cover are Midnight, The Unquiet Dead.
Ooh, that's a good one, and that's with
Yeah.
zombies and
Again, zombies with a theme.
I think that fits into Halloween, but it's not as scary moments, but it's not.
The Unquiet Dead,
Yeah.
it's Christmassy to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it has.
well, that's because of the Charles Dickens
Yeah, and it
aspect.
takes-
But I thought the first half was
But
a
it's
lot
also
more.
Christmas Eve,
kind of
Halloween.
scary. But
Yeah.
The Satan Pit, Impossible Planet.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's
Yeah,
the devil.
that devil creature is terrifying.
Yeah,
I think it's terrifying.
except for its horns.
Another other ones would be like Human
I
Nature,
remember that.
The Family of Blood, and Human Nature with the scarecrows. I thought would be really good.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, and I see that as just one aspect of a bigger non-Halloweeny kind of thing.
Right.
True, but I mean, it does have the scarecrows.
They're creepy.
Feels like it's
No, they're
autumn.
very creepy.
I
You know, and
have
so
I have
that
one
goes with
like
it.
that too. It's not a Halloweeny episode, but there's an episode with the 11th Doctor and Amy called "The Beast Below," and it's not a Halloweeny episode, but it has these like fortune teller
Yes.
mechanical
Yes, like
head
motion faces.
creatures.
The
and-
robe monk thingies.
Yeah, and when you get them upset, like the head turns and turns
right.
into an
Yes.
angry face, and they creep me out. So it's not a Halloweeny episode, but
Oh, right.
if you want to cry yourself to sleep,
And some of the aspects of it after the solved the mystery, and that is still creepy
Yeah.
and scary. So,
but yeah, when
in a
the
different way.
kids do bad, I think they get like sucked down into quote unquote hell or something. I don't know, it's scary. But anyway,
An episode that I almost recommended was Day of the Moon. Only right. That's the,
Yes.
Day of the Moon. Only because I remember that's the one where the villain or the monster is the Silence. 6-7 feet tall creatures in suits, and once you turn away, you forget that you ever saw them. Rory and Amy and River Song, and they're like marking their faces, or not their faces.
The
They,
body.
they mark their body once they see them, so they know that they had an encounter. And there's this scene that's so Halloweeny
Yes.
where Amy runs into. Well, they go to visit this like children's home, and it's raining, it's stormy, and the
Caretaker's crazy.
The caretaker's crazy. All the children are gone. On the wall is written like "Get out." And what do they split up. Amy goes into a room by herself. She realizes she had an encounter. She gets freaked out. She runs to like a window, looks in the mirror, or looks in the reflection in the window, and there's markings all over her face. So she's been in this room a while.
That was terrifying. That was creepy.
Unfortunately, the episode as a whole wasn't Halloweeny enough
Right.
for a recommendation, but just that scene, almost all of season 6 and season 7 is Halloweeny. Like there's in all of those episodes, there's a scene. That
Even the
is just
crack
so
in
terrifying.
Amy's window that that's
the
been,
wall.
that follow in her wall. Thank you. Sorry. That follows them through the different episodes. Even that's creepy. And,
Who wants to make a YouTube supercut?
Yeah.
You know?
Any others you want to mention?
Oh, there's plenty. I mean,
But that
I think
you want
if
to
you're
mention.
scared of things that are under the bed, there's Listen with Capaldi.
There's a visual on that one that terrifies me when the blanket on the bed, rises
yes,
up.
Yes.
What? No.
Mummy on the Orient Express.
We mentioned
It's a
that one.
classic, but it's a classic universal idea of a mummy.
Universal
So-
big U.
Right.
Well, also, I liked the thing about that was you have 30 seconds before
33?
it.
No, 66?
Some weird.
Something.
It's
Yeah.
not a
Random
full
number.
number.
Yeah.
64.
Yeah, mine
29.
I think it is 66.
I do want to say that if you are having young
It's a trivia
adults,
question.
some of the kids who want to watch it, some that might be good for kids to watch would be Fear Her, because they might relate to that more.
Oh, the scribble monster?
Yeah.
Right. The Shakespeare Code is dealing with Shakespeare and the witches, and that's,
We
an
don't have
iconic
witches
look.
on the list.
Which is not, I don't think for us being for Halloween, but I think the Shakespeare Code is really good for kids. There's also an Sarah Jane Adventures episode, The Eternity Trap, which is dealing with haunted house and ghosts.
Is that the one?
Well-
That's not the one with Trickster? That's the season finale of season 1, I believe.
School reunion. Isn't that what Sarah Jane is?
No, we're talking
No,
about
this
Sarah
the
Jane
Sarah Jane
Adventures.
Adventures. She has a spin-off.
Oh.
I can't remember too much. I remember
But anything with the Trickster is creepy.
Trickster's also, right, but I don't think this one,
Okay.
because I know it's part of a two-part. I can't remember the other part, I think. But the Eternity Trap, but haunted houses and you're stuck there. So, and those are made more for kids. So I think if you have younger adults, 12 and stuff, they might like those.
And the Vampires of Venice. Because we have to put vampires on the list. Those girls with their long teeth like you've never seen on a vampire. But,
Because they're fish.
yeah, they're fish pyres. There's no good way to do that.
Those long white flowing robes that you associate
Yes.
with traditional vampire stories.
Yeah.
The look of it is good. And James Gordon was in an episode called The Lodger.
Oh,
Which-
I love it.
I don't know if it's for Halloween, but it's pretty good and does have a little creepy neighbor aspect to it.
What's going on upstairs is creepy.
It's really, yeah.
Especially when it gets the dog and the human in the wrong
Oh,
order.
yeah.
And so the dog starts talking and the human starts barking.
Oh no, that's
No.
the 11th hour. That's Matt Smith's first episode.
Yeah,
Oh.
that one
That's
has
Scratch
some
that.
good
Prisoner
parts to it.
Zero?
Prisoner Zero.
Zero,
scratch
yeah.
that.
But that's what Doctor Who. There's so many different moments in
Yes.
episodes that are really
Tons
creepy
of
and
moments
Halloween
in
like, but the
episodes.
whole episode itself may not be.
Yeah.
I was going to bring up Last Christmas, which is the special with Nick Frost as Santa Claus, because it reminds me so much of The Thing. They're in an Arctic base again, and there's an
Oh, an
alien.
An alien.
Yeah.
I mean, intentionally.
Yes, of course,
They're
intentionally.
intentionally doing it, but yeah.
So those are our recommendations of what to play during a Halloween Doctor Who marathon. Tweet at us, email us, and Facebook us what you think and what you would choose for your marathon. Happy Halloween, and we'll see you next time when the future becomes the present.
You've just listened to an episode of Who Knew?
Our wonderful theme music is by Michael Grady.
Find him on Facebook.
At The Universe Explodes.
All our episodes are engineered by our very own Auburn.
Find me at auburnbinkley.com.
You can find this show in several places.
Follow us on Twitter at Who Knew Podcasts.
Subscribe, review, and listen to us on iTunes and Stitcher.
Or our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Who Knew Podcast.
All our episodes are on whoknewpodcast.com.
You can leave comments there or email us at
Who Knew Podcast at gmail.com.
This podcast is inspired by Doctor Who.
The longest running sci-fi show in history.
And especially the revival spearheaded by Russell T. Davis.
thanks to Russell,
Sydney Newman,
Verity Lambert.
Ron Grainer.
And all those involved in the adventures of our favorite Time Lord.
Your work continues to inspire and entertain.
Okay, this is silly, but
All
Dark
right.
and stormy night. 7 strangers gathered together.
oh, I like that.
Hello.